I say this to say that a lot of people, in the history of our world, have rolled the dice for their freedom. And for trans people, when you can't match the way you look on the outside with the way you feel and think and your essence is from the inside, so match your outside with your inside, it really does become a matter of life and death.
Welcome to Skin Deep. I'm Dr. Anna Chacon, and today we have a very special guest joining us. Get ready for some expert insights you won't want to miss. Tell me a little bit where you're from, your background, because you have a very interesting name.
So I was born in New York, Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I am multiracial. My father was South Asian Indian. That's where my name is from. It's an Indian name. From Trinidad, from the country of Trinidad, because there's a big South Asian Indian population there. It was all with the British, and that's a whole nother show.
Yeah.
And then my mother is American, and my mom is a mix. My mom is a mix of African American, French, Polynesian, and Native American. So the way I explain myself is that, like, I'm a mutt.
Yeah, that's funny. That's like a lot of people here. And do you have any ties to South Florida? Because I think when I first read about you, the story was a South Florida story, a news story. But what is your connection to South Florida?
When I was 21, it was time for me to leave home, to leave the nest. I was coming more into myself, and my dad and I, we were starting to clash more. And I knew it was time for me to go. So at the time, I had an aunt that lived in Miami. And it was between Miami or going out to St. Louis. I had a friend that was living there at the time. So my mom was like, "Why are you going to go to St. Louis? You always said growing up, when you grew up, you wanted to move to a warm climate." And she says, "I feel better because, your aunt is in Miami." So long story short, I ended up in Miami. And I've been here ever since, well, South Florida, because I live in Fort Lauderdale now. But I've been in South Florida for many years. It's basically home now.
And you live here now?
Yes, I live here now. I'm actually in Victoria Park. It's like off of Sunrise Boulevard going east towards the beaches. It's a pretty nice neighborhood. I like it here. I've been here a few years in this neighborhood.
Okay, excellent. We started initially focusing on patients. Really, I had some very interesting cases because I work all over the country. I'm licensed in all 50 states. I'm in California now. And I just was getting a lot of interesting cases, mostly online, and then going out to see people. But then it became more physician focused. So more focused on doctors who were either entrepreneurs or solo practitioners like me, and then became mostly focused on entrepreneurs and just, people with a unique edge or that are passionate about something. And I would say that you're definitely in that category because you've made really the best out of a bad situation. And as I was mentioning to you, I want to say before things became very digital, it was hard to identify these situations, hard to identify these people, hard to track these things down. And now, as we've become more digitalized, it's harder to, I want to say, get away with this, right? But we still see it. As I was, discussing with you today, there's a lot of compliance, too many compliance things on physicians now that it's hard to do these things. We have to we can get dinged for so many things, and it's a privilege to be able to see patients. I always think that, it's a privilege. It's not a right as a physician, and you have to hold that privilege to the utmost importance, And so we have, a lot of fees, a lot of tests. You can't even imagine requirements, background checks, all these other things that are in place that, if people go to someone who evades that, they're probably evading other things,
Yeah.
And so you want to always make sure anybody can check if their doctor's board certified, where they went to school, if they've been sued before, if they've had public complaints. And in medicine, it's a very harsh environment for that because you are treated differently from other professionals. And it's something that I hold to extreme value. So I was very hurt when I heard your story because this should never happen to anybody. And tell me a little bit kind of how you landed in that situation in the first place.
Well, I'm a transgender human being. And because of that, when I was transitioning a number of years ago,
Mhm.
there were very little resources for us. We had no rights. Many of us were rubbing two nickels together to live our authenticity. And I mean, it's not much better today. Actually, there's backlash going on. So we're losing the rights that we fought so hard for. But back in the day, a lot of doctors weren't open to treating us. And again, many of us were living like on the fringes of society and just didn't have the resources to go to a certified doctor because, of finances. And so it was a lot of things that played into it. But it became almost a rite of passage for us transgender women. There was the peer pressure because when you're coming out, you're seeing the other trans women looking so beautiful and voluptuous. And that played into it, the peer pressure. But then there's also the safety factor. And that basically boils down to the less you look like a man in a dress when you're out and about in society, the less you'll be scrutinized and picked on and a target. No offense to men in dresses, but basically, so those were the two major reasons that I went down the road of black market injections. It was well known in our community by word of mouth. And I heard about this person in the community that they were doing a lot of the girls. We call her the Duchess or Duchess. I connected with her. And basically, I started with my face because I figured it's the first thing that people see when you go out in public, at least here in this part of the world. I'm not in Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan or something, but so I started with my face and then I worked my way down and I did my breast, I did my hips, my buttocks. And about a year and a half in is when I had the horrible reaction. And I was like, oh my God, I know something is wrong. You get that gut feeling inside where, oh my God, I effed up, basically. But I say this to say that a lot of people, in the history of our world, have rolled the dice for their freedom. And for trans people, when you can't match the way you look on the outside with the way you feel and think and your essence is from the inside, so match your outside with your inside. It really does become a matter of life and death in the sense that you're not living your authentic truth and you feel like you're in a social prison, basically, because, of many different reasons. Like some people don't transition because of fear of being rejected from their family, society, their friends, all the discrimination that we go through because it's not just in the medical world, but housing and employment and just maneuvering through society. So initially I looked beautiful and then I had the horrible reaction and it just over time it just got worse and I ended up walking around with like really huge nodules all over my face. And I always say this, it's hard enough being a multiracial transgender woman of color. It's even harder when you're that and you have a disfigured face. So I went through a lot.
Yeah, no, and I understand because we're both minorities, and it's you definitely have to try harder.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels that way. I definitely feel for you doing that. And a couple of things, just out of curiosity. So things initially felt and looked fine.
Yes.
Okay, so you could not tell, that anything would go wrong. One of the things I like to do in the office, for example, when I'm injecting patients or when I'm doing cosmetic dermatology or fillers, trust is something that takes a really long time to build with a patient. It's very subjective, right? You can sign a bunch of papers and still not trust somebody. You can look about, on them online and still feel like you can't trust them. But it's built really on a personal level with the patient in the office. I like to show patients that my items are high quality, that they are, for example, from Allergan. But you're going to see Botox directly from Allergan in the Botox vial. If you get fillers, I use a lot of Juvederm from Allergan. You're going to see a box and Allergan with the
Yeah.
name of the product. So I'm just curious, when you were with this individual, did you ever see the items and
Yes.
what they look like?
Okay. So, hopefully you live and you learn, and a lot of stuff is like in retrospect. When I decided to get the injections, I did proceed with somewhat of a cautionary mode because I asked her, I said, "Are you sure this is medical grade silicone?" And she assured me that it was. But to answer your question, no, I did not see the labels.
Mhm.
And when I first initially got connected with Dr. Martin in Coral Gables, he was the first doctor to help me. He told me, he said, Rajee, medical grade silicone comes like in small bottles. When I was going, she would have like these big glass containers. And if I knew that, that would have been, if I knew that then, that would have been a red flag, but I didn't. So it looked like medical grade silicone because of, the mixture she had used, because she used mineral oil. She mixed it with mineral oil to, I guess, give it that look. And so I know a lot of people have gone through this, and I think there's a shame that comes with it. People don't want to talk about it. They're embarrassed that they went for black market procedures. For me, it's almost been like I've made my mess my message, and I was so basically thrust it into the world media overnight. So it was not almost. It was me taking a bad thing, quote unquote, a bad thing, and using it to do good. Because initially, I didn't know that I could get any sort of corrective surgery.
Yeah.
I just thought if I could share my story and educate people about it, maybe I would save some people from going down the road that I went and having the medical issues and the pain and dealing with the emotional stuff. Cause I was scared to go out in public. People were very, we live in a very superficial world. So when you look a certain way, people are judging you right away. And, they were saying some mean stuff to me. And I became agoraphobic, and I love people, but I was fearful of going out in public for fear of how they were going to react to me. And I went through depression and PTSD and a bunch of things. So it's not only a physical thing that I was affected by, but it also affected me mentally and spiritually.
Yeah. So is it John Martin and Coral Gables?
Dr. John Martin, yeah. He's on, I think, Douglas Road.
Okay. How did you connect with him? I'm actually also in Coral Gables.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, how I connected with him at the time, I was doing a lot of outreach work and activism for my community through the Yes Institute. The Yes Institute is a really good program. They go out to different venues and they do a presentation on gender and how gender impacts our societies, because every society has their gender rules, the way a man is supposed to act, the way a woman is supposed to act. And so then after they do the presentation, they usually have, and it's a film strip. And then afterwards, they usually have someone like myself speak and share their story. So I was doing a lot of that. The director Martha Fagart. She was the founder and director of Yes for a long time. She's retired now. But she called me one day and I thought it was a business call, like they wanted me to go speak somewhere. And she said to me, Rajee, I'm calling you as a friend. We all here at Yes are very concerned about what's going on with you health wise. Your face looks really bad and we're concerned about it. And when I first had the reaction, I went into denial. I didn't go for help. I was embarrassed, ashamed, scared, feeling hopeless. And I was just in this thing like, hoping and praying that it would go away. And it just got worse. So she called me and she said, there is at the time, Dr. Martin was on the board of Yes. And she says, I had a conversation with Dr. John Martin, who's on our board here at Yes. And I told him about you. And he said that he's willing to see you. And that was the first time I was able to really get help, and I needed that push. And I'll tell you, when I went in, I'm sitting in the exam room and he walks in the room and I say hello and he looks at me and he says, sweetie, what did they do to your face? And I just started crying. And he examined me and he said to me, he said, listen, I don't know how I'm going to help you, but he said, I can promise you, I'm going to try my best to. He said, I heard about all your community work you've been doing, and I think it's a great thing. And he says, I really want to try and help you. So that was the beginning of many years of all kind of stuff. It was like trial and error. I told him I felt like his Steiner, because we did an initial surgery. I was supposed to be on the table for an hour, hour and a half, and I ended up on the table for 4 hours and he couldn't cut through it. My face was hard as a rock. And he actually broke the scalpel during surgery. So he only got like a little piece out. So then after that, it was a lot of like Kenalog injections. Every couple weeks I would go, and he did ultrasonic procedures and laser. And over the years, what it did is it made the consistency like the consistency of like a tire. So you could kind of cut through it better. But initially, it was hard as a rock.
What is Yes? I didn't understand what that is. Yeah.
So Yes is an organization where they go out to different venues, schools, universities, libraries, all sorts of venues, and they do a presentation about gender. And they explain the biology of gender, the social or sociology of gender. It's just the purpose is to advocate for queer kids that feel like they're ostracized and they don't belong, and to prevent suicide. Because for trans youth, we have a pretty high suicide rate. It's 40 something percent. And so it's to educate people. So maybe if they're not fully accepting, they understand it more. And there's some sort of bridge of understanding and tolerance. And so, because as a doctor, there's not just X and Y and XX. People are born X, Y, X. They have like extra chromosomes. And so that affects the way you are as a person, because you can be born male, but have an extra chromosome of X, which gives you the feminine part. There's heterosexual men that come off feminine. And there's heterosexual women that come off masculine. And so there's a lot of things that play into that, the biology of it, the sociology of it, the person's, that whole thing, nature and nurture. So we explain that in a presentation, and then they bring someone up that's transgender or non-binary or gender non-conforming to bring the human into it, because you can sit and study all day about a certain demographic of people. But until you meet someone that's living the experience and can share their life, that's when the human connection takes place. And I've seen it where I've walked into a room, the walls were up. And then after sharing my story, like slowly but surely, a lot of the walls came down, and people realized, oh, they're human like me. They have a family, they have friends, they have hopes and dreams like I do. Because that's what happens when people are ignorant about something. They There's a lack of understanding, which creates fear, which then creates, when you're fearful of something, you either want to run from it or you want to destroy it. You want to fight it.
Yeah, that's excellent. And is it Youth and Service Organization? Is that what it stands for?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's a YES, Yes Institute.
I definitely want to get involved, especially if they have doctors.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
should check them out. Yeah, and you can tell them that referred you. I know everyone there because I spoke for them for many years. And actually, I just was involved with the workshop that was done about a month ago, that was done through the Yes Institute here in Fort Lauderdale.
We actually learn how to dissolve fillers in dermatology residency. We use hyaluronidase, we use sometimes Kenalog injections, steroid injections, and things like that. I'm just curious because I saw you came out on Botched as well on that show. What did they use exactly, Dr. Martin and the doctors on Botched, to help you? And how much did, yeah, if you don't
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah,
kind of-
sure. So Dr. Martin, after the surgery that he tried to do that really failed because my face was too hard to cut through anything, he used Kenalog, a lot of Kenalog injections.
Yeah.
Yes, over many years. And, then my story went viral. I was basically like all over. I was on Germany TV, Telemundo, Univision. I was on Greek TV and Good Morning Britain, literally Japanese TV, just literally all over. Did the talk show circuit. Then I ended up on Botched. And the first season that I was on, they didn't do anything. They just basically featured my story. And you know what was so beautiful about that? I got messages from like many people around the world and I hadn't had any corrective surgery at that point, that were saying, Rajee, but you're beautiful. You're beautiful. Like, so what? Your face is that way. And it just affirmed for me that really, and I know it sounds cliche, but true beauty is really from within. And that's what people were seeing, my inner beauty. But season 2 is when I had the surgeries. They brought me back and they did a number of surgeries. I think it was about 7 on my face.
Wow.
And they removed a lot of it. But the thing about these injections, like, and from what I hear, it was a mixture of like industrial strength silicone mixed with mineral oil. And so the thing about it is you're getting it injected into direct. There's no encapsulation. So it's mixing with your tissues and your nerves and that sort of thing. And so they literally, to go in and just like hack it out, especially in the face, is kind of difficult, because Dr. DeBro from Botch, he was worried about affecting some nerves with my lips, where it would have given me like a twisted lip.
Yeah.
So they removed a lot, but I still deal with, I call them flare ups, where my body recognizes, and it's basically foreign body rejection syndrome, where I'm okay for a while and then my body recognizes, wait a minute, what is this foreign thing, and we need to do something about it. So then I start with the inflammation and I get like the little nodules, and not only in my face. Last month, it was in my left breast. It started like acting up a bit. So I'm basically, sometimes I feel like a walking time bomb or ticking time bomb because I don't know what's going to happen going forward, but I just monitor myself. And I notice when I'm very stressed out is when like I'll get like the flare ups oftentimes.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have helped patients like that, in terms, and actually I did a surgery. I remember when I was an intern at University of Miami, where we removed in a transgender patient silicone that was injected into the buttocks. And it was
Yeah.
one of the hardest, most bloodiest things that I have seen, because everything was tangled. It was kind of tangled in there into the regular tissue, and it left, a lot of concave depression into this person's buttock. And I just remember thinking, number one, this is very risky. The just removing it is just extremely risky. And it was just kind of rocks of hardened
Yeah.
tissue that we were just taking out. And I've definitely, thankfully, have seen less of that now that everything is digital. And like I mentioned, you can look up someone in 2 seconds and find their background, even doctors, and everything about them, or most professional things about them.
Yeah.
You can find that out. And did you fly out to California to see these physicians? Mhm.
Yes, I did fly out. I went probably about 12 times back and forth to
Wow.
film Botched for the three different seasons.
Mhm.
And on the second season I was out there for about 6 weeks when I had like all the surgeries. But what I was going to say in regards to like things being digital, I also too, a lot of authentic stories are out there now, like including myself. And I would hope that like when I've shared my story on different platforms, there have been people that have heard it. And if they were thinking about doing what I did, maybe it changed their mind. And I recommend like people just doing their research, like you were saying, with looking up the doctor, checking credentials. Also, looking at and hearing the results of patients that have already went to the doctor. That's another thing I always recommend. So yeah, it's good that the information is out there. I think that this beauty thing, especially with women,
Mhm.
cisgendered women and trans women, it's a thing and it'll continue to be a thing because no matter what culture you live in, every culture has their beauty, their standard of beauty.
Ideals of beauty. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
every culture. Some cultures want the women more voluptuous. Some cultures want them more skinnier. I mean, it's just all different. And so, if you're a woman in a society, oftentimes I think many women can relate to feeling pressure to be beautiful. And so, this is something I still hear this stuff going on. And I know that probably because people don't have the resources, the money. So it's like a quick fix. I can afford it. Let me go get it done. But you really do roll the dice and you can die from it. I know people like, I've heard of people, didn't know them personally, but I've heard of people that have died from it. I fortunately am still here to do my activism, share my story, and continue to hopefully touch the world in positive, uplifting ways. But if you don't die from it, then you can end up being in a situation like me, where it's a chronic thing, it's ongoing, and you're dealing with health issues. So yeah, it's a dangerous thing. It really is. And if they hit that vein and it goes in your bloodstream, it can go to your lungs. And I think that's like oftentimes what happens when a person dies from it. They hit that vein. Yeah.
No, I understand. And we in Miami, every so often you'll hear about a death. Now it's, for a while, the deaths that were being caused were mostly the
Yeah.
the Brazilian butt. where you just, take fat from somewhere else and inject it in the butt, and then you get these enormous butts. And in fact, I was looking at a photo of Duchess the other day. That's what I guess she goes by. That was online, and just the buttock
I
is
know.
was huge. It looks like she has a seat attached to
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. It does.
uh, I understand what you're saying with sometimes being female and being self-conscious about stuff, because I'm very short. I never considered myself, you know, I knew I couldn't do modeling. I wasn't tall, I didn't have naturally, easy to work with qualities like great hair or anything like that. And I wasn't actually used to be obese. So, I recently lost a ton of weight on one of these weight loss injections, a semaglutide or Ozempic. And
Great. You look great.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. But yeah, it's pretty easy to feel self-conscious and
it
do
is.
something to try to correct it. And sometimes that choice may not be the right choice for that person. But yeah, in Miami, you still hear about some of these clinics, and they offer sometimes very, very low prices, and that's what entices people. But
Yes.
you figure, because all of this is costly, right? To have an anesthesiologist there, to be compliant, to undergo all the compliance checks that an operating center needs, and the materials that you have to use, like fillers, are extremely expensive. They've recently come down in price, the FDA approved ones, but for example, Botox is the most expensive neurotoxin that you could get injected. And their fillers are the most expensive too. They're great quality, but they're just extremely costly. So, do you still do the advocacy work, and do you still keep in touch with, for example, the doctors on botch? Like, how was your follow up with them?
I'm an activist at heart. So yes, to answer your question about the community work, I do a lot. I feel like I'm almost like I belong to the community. So I say that to say, like, I've done work with the Pride Center. I've done work with SunServe. I've done work with Trans Inclusive and a number of organizations in different capacities. Currently, I'm with Trans Social, which is a trans-led, trans-focused organization. So I do a lot of outreach work with them. I'm on the board of directors, and I also help with the trainings, the sensitivity trainings. We recently did one for Chase Bank, and we also did one for Kaiser University recently. So, and I think it's so good because the reality is these are places where, because more and more people are coming out as trans, the likelihood is that you're going to run into someone transgender, maybe in your work situation or just in your life in general. And it's good to be able to like plant seeds and give people the knowledge to understand our community better. And so, as far as the doctors are concerned, I have Dr. DeBro's personal cell phone number, and I try not to bug him too much.
Yeah,
But we'll text like during the holidays or something. I'll send him a text and that sort of thing, and he'll text me back. Yeah, and he told me during the big reveal, my big reveal, he whispered in my ear and he says, "I want to tell you something." He says, "I care about you." And he says, "This show, yes, we're doing the show." But he says, "If you ever need something and you feel the need to reach out to me, do not hesitate." He says, because the way he was trying to communicate is that, yes, Botch, the show, is an important thing. We're here filming and all, but to the core of it, it's about you, the patient, the doctor patient relationship. And that meant a lot to me. That meant a whole lot to me.
that's wonderful. And I'm glad that you still keep in touch with him. And was he the only one that worked on you on the show?
Okay, so
Mhm.
Dr. Dubrow and Dr. Nassif, they
Yeah.
both treated me. Dr. Dubrow was the one that spearheaded the major surgeries to remove a lot of it, a lot of the substance.
Okay. Okay. I did. I see
Yes.
that.
So he was the one that like operated on me. Dr. Nassif initially in the beginning was involved with like the diagnosis and like recommending different treatments and stuff. So he was involved, but when it came down to the surgery, Dr. Dubrow did it.
Okay, I see that. And so they actually did, besides the injections, they actually try to remove the foreign body.
Yeah, they removed a good bit of it. Because I don't know if you Google me, you'll see like some before pictures where my face was humongous. It was pretty big. And you know, I had like the nodules, you could see them. I mean, I have smaller ones now here and there, but like I literally you could see like the nodules.
and they
I'll
actually
send
made
you
it.
some pictures.
Yeah, no, those would be nice to have, to compare, because we try. I don't know. I, as a dermatologist, try to not operate on the face if I don't have to.
Yeah.
Because of that patient I told you where we did the buttock, and I was like, wow. But they actually did an incision and a scalpel, because I actually don't see incisions on your face, which is surprising. Yeah.
They basically cut me along here and pulled my face back.
Like a facelift, kind
Like
of like doing a facelift.
yes,
So your incisions are right here.
they're
Wow.
here, like, and I think around here, but they faded a lot now. But yeah, that's how they went in because they didn't want to give me scars like here going
Yeah.
in that way. So
Right.
they pulled it back and then they went at it. Yeah.
Wow. Just kind of with a scalpel and iris scissors to kind of
Yeah.
dissect out the adherent tissue. And do you still have aftermath from this today? Does it hurt? Do you still get, flare ups and
Yeah,
stuff?
I do. I do. I get my, and actually, I was just at Dr. Martin's a few weeks ago getting some Catalog because recently I have had flare ups in my face. So I was scheduled to go back in a couple more weeks to get some more. Because he told me, he says, no, you need to come. Because after botch, my face looks so nice and I didn't have flare ups for a while. So I wasn't going to him that often. And so
Yeah.
this time when I went a few weeks ago, he's like, oh no, you need to come back within the next like month or so. So I'll be going soon. And then, like I said, this left breast has been flaring up a bit.
Oh, so yeah, we didn't talk about your body actually.
Yeah.
Uh, Kind of forgot to bring that up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my breast, this left one has recently started flaring up a bit, but the right one has been okay. And my hips and my buttocks, fingers crossed, for right now are okay.
Okay, I see. So you got all three areas injected only? The buttocks, the breast, and
Uh,
the face.
my hips, my buttocks, my breast, and my face.
Okay.
And
And did
actually, I was in the middle of getting my butt done when I had the horrible reaction and I stopped because I was like, oh my God, something's wrong. And so I probably would have went bigger, if I hadn't, had the
that
reaction
hadn't happened? Yeah, and that happened almost a year later from the
like a
original.
year and a half.
Okay, wow. And what have they done for the body? I know the face, is more visible, but for the body, did you do anything any corrective procedures on botched or with Dr. Martin or anything like that? No.
No, nothing for the body. The thing is with my breasts, my skin is so stretched now. If they could, they will probably have to do a mastectomy. And I'd have to start over with like the tissue expanders. And so I don't know. Like at this point, I've been through so much. I'm like, God, could I go through that? Like,
Go through more. Could you go through more?
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
and there's a point where you just try to find some sort of peace,
Peace. Yeah.
some
Yeah.
sort of solace, because I could stand up all day and probably pick myself apart. But then I remind myself that this is all temporary anyway. We're just passing through. And the important thing is how I impact the people around me in my life. Because, when you go to someone's funeral, you don't think about the clothes they wore or the house they lived in or the car
Right.
that they drove. You think about the way that person made you feel and how they impacted your life. And that's what I've been really focusing on.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know this is all temporary. And, time goes so fast and we're just passing through.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've made a tremendous difference. And, like I said, you're very courageous with everything that you've been through, and you look great. And you have a very supportive network,
Yeah.
that developed over the years. Dr. Martin's a great person, Dr. Dubrow as well, and now you know me.
Yes,
Um,
I know
yeah,
you.
and I definitely, I've been through this with patients before, and I definitely feel for you. And a couple other questions just out of curiosity. How did you find out what was even injected?
When I went to Dr. Martin initially, they had taken
A
the
sample.
the
Was it a
sam
sample?
yes, it was a sample that was taken from my face during that first surgery where they could hardly cut through it, but they
Mhm.
were able to get like a little bit of it out, a piece of it, with the tissue and stuff. And that's what they were saying. But it was almost like, I don't know. See, I don't understand how they test these things really, but that's what they basically said. It was like 90 so percent. That's what it was, that it was industrial strength silicone. The kind of stuff that you buy at like Home Depot.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's the medical grade and then there's the industrial,
Yeah.
which is used for like I guess corking and stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow. How did Duchess, how did this come to light in terms of her finally being put away for doing this so she doesn't continue harming people? Because, I have had some patients where, they tell me, oh, somebody came from Colombia, they did this in a hotel in Miami, and they won't tell me who that person is. How did this, how she basically get in trouble for it?
Yeah.
Uh,
So
yeah.
okay, so initially my mom was down here visiting on oh
Mhm.
sorry. My mom was down here visiting on vacation. And what happened, we were sitting having dinner and we were watching the news and she pops up. The story popped up and that this person had been arrested for the injecting black market and giving black market injections to somebody. And I forgot their name. They were someone from Miami too. They ended up in the hospital and they reported her to the police. So that's when they went and I guess they arrested her. So I just nonchalantly said to my mom, I said, "Oh, mom, that's the girl that did me." She's like, "What?" I said, "Yeah." So
Oh
she
my.
the the news reporter said, "If there's any victims out there, please contact us. Any other victims?" So my mom's like, "Are you going to call?" And I was like, "Oh, what's the point? Like, you know, like I'm already botched, and like, what is this going to do?" And I said, "I can't sue her like for money to help me because she didn't have anything really." And so my mom looked at me and she says, "Well, if I were you, I would think about it." And so after she told me that, I prayed on it. I thought a lot about it, meditated. And then I said, you know what? If I can share my story and if my story is going to help other people and just help to educate, the society about this sort of thing, then I've used my story to do a good thing. I've taken this bad thing that's happened to me and used it for good. So that's when I basically contacted them. But I want to say this, I never pressed charges against Duchess. She's not in jail in prison because of me. Someone died from it.
Really?
Yeah,
They actually, I don't remember reading that on the news.
yeah, yeah. Someone died
Oh,
from it, and she was charged with manslaughter. So she's currently in prison for that case. The police couldn't understand why they want to press charges, and I felt like I know. Okay, so this is the thing. It's like really complicated. And a lot of people don't understand when I say this, but I was like, I had to take some responsibility for making the decision to go to her. So, as someone that I not now, granted, I didn't know what she was using, but I did make the decision to go to her. So I felt like I needed to take some sort of responsibility for that. And then I thought, do I even have the strength to go through a trial? And if I'm going to exert my energy, why not do it with talking about it, going out and doing interviews and like, educating people about it. So that's why I decided not to pursue that. And so when people hear that, they're like, "Oh, I would have did this and I would have done that." But I think it's hard to say what you would do unless you're in my shoes. And
yeah.
also, I have to say too that I know how hard it is for us trans women. And there was a part of me that even kind of felt sorry for her. I don't know why, but I just, I had that part of me that was feeling that way too.
Forgiving.
Mm,
You were pretty forgiving.
yeah.
And just curious, it always amazes me sometimes what people charge for these things that are not even legal, because I know how much I pay for Botox, thousands
Yeah.
when I place orders and fillers. And it's actually even hard to make anything because of how expensive it is to get the
Yeah.
real, you know, the,
The real deal, right?
exactly. How much was this lady charging for this stuff that wasn't even, legal?
Yeah, it was very reasonable. I was paying like $100 a session, 100, maybe 150. But this is something she'd do for the trans women. She'd tell us she's going to give us a deal. She had cisgendered women going to her that I heard she was charging like a lot more. And I think that also made me feel a sisterhood with her because I'm like, oh, we're both trans. She's looking out for me, that kind of thing. And that made me trust her more. That was like I think a part of it too, that I felt like we had a sisterhood.
And that's interesting because one of the things, for example, I was told when I opened my practice that, I got all kinds of advice is that you can't charge different patients differently, you know, uh,
Yeah.
can't do that. You can run a special,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
special for
Yeah.
everybody.
Across
Yeah,
the board. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
exactly. You can't be like picking and choosing because you're nice or because you're a trans girl like I
Yeah.
am, you're going to get 50% off. It kind of, because medicine is about trying to do the best job on everybody and treating people as equals, but putting your 100% of your effort and care and, and it just kind of unequalizes things.
Yes.
This has been like the by far the most interesting podcast I've done. I
Thank
am
you.
so honored and I feel grateful that you opened up because I know it's very difficult to do. And I'm sorry that you were crying, but Just know that you're helping a lot of people, you're educating, and everyone has a bad experience that they go through. And as a physician, I've just learned so much from you. I hope we stay in a lot of touch. And if I can help you in any way, I'm
And
available.
I also wanted to say this too.
Yeah.
The amazing thing about our life and living in the world is that you hear this a lot. When people, I was brutally beaten up too because I'm trans by some guys who targeted me for my femininity, and they beat me up pretty bad. And I kept thinking, oh my God, like if I had died that night, would I have died knowing that I tried to stand up and do something about the way things are for trans people? And I say that to say that it's amazing when people go through traumatic situations and they get to the other side, oftentimes that is the thing that's the catalyst for them to go do some powerful work in the world. So I feel blessed that I've been able to do that. And thank you for having me on your podcast. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Rajee. But have a wonderful day. And this won't be the last time we talk. I just
Okay.
know you, and I'm very grateful for getting to know you. And, you can count on me as a contact, another physician, someone that can help you. My door's always open.
Thank
Okay.
you so much. Love, peace, and blessings to you.
Thank you, Rajee. Have a great Friday and a great weekend.
You too.
Thanks.